Welcome to episode 8 of our epic RV adventure. In this episode, we traveled to Salem, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Plymouth, Massachusetts. We continued to utilize the campground at Hanscom Air Force Base in Boston, and we took a day trip north to visit our 8th and 9th states. Unfortunately, when we arrived in Salem, the government shutdown was imminent. Luckily, we squeezed into the Salem Maritime National Historic Site just before the gates were locked. Salem might be best known for its witch trials, but it also has a rich seafaring heritage. We were also able to see the custom house where Nathaniel Hawthorne was employed. If you've ever read the prologue to The Scarlet Letter, then you've no doubt suffered through his long, verbose, very detailed description of this custom house. It was here in Salem, being descended from a judge of the Salem witch trial, that Hawthorne wrestled with his guilt and hence conceived of the idea behind his novel. We next continued to drive northward along coastal New Hampshire. It was a beautiful day, and we stopped a few times to play along the shore of the Atlantic Ocean. We also made a stop at an abandoned fort called Fort Constitution. In 1791, this fort was built over the remains of a British fort called Fort William and Mary. This was a great spot for the kids to run wild and explore all the nooks and crannies of the fort. They had a great time. Lastly, we entered the beautiful state of Maine. We drove to Portland to see the East Coast's most famous lighthouse, the Portland Head Light. It is easy to see why it is not only the oldest, but also the most photographed lighthouse on the East Coast. We spent some time admiring the scene as the sun began to set behind us and the cruise ships sailed past. As it got dark, we drove to a local spot for some lobster. After all, when you're in Maine, you gotta have lobster. We drove back home after dark. The kids fell asleep in the car after our long, adventurous day. The next day after lunch, we drove an hour and a half south to go see a rock. Yes, a rock. Plymouth Rock to be exact, but a rock nonetheless. This completely confused our younger boys who couldn't understand why we would drive so far to see a rock. This rock is enshrined in a Greek revival shelter. Around the corner from the rock is a replica of the Mayflower, but we didn't pay the admission price to go into it. It would have been far too expensive for our large family. One of our sons bought some Vermont maple syrup at the gift shop, and then we were pretty much done. So after an hour of looking at the rock and the ship, we piled back into the car and drove back home again. Now we can say we've been there and done that. We thoroughly enjoyed our 2-week stay in Boston. Join us next time as we venture into New York City.